Milan is a young man who grew up in a small town. His parents, both successful professionals, work abroad and visit home only a few times a year. Growing up without them, Milan became accustomed to the quiet life, relying on his relatives for emotional support. One of the most influential people in his life was his aunt, Emila. She was warm, caring, and always a source of comfort. Milan had always admired her, not just for her kindness, but for the way she seemed to manage her life so effortlessly. One day, Milan's parents informed him that they would be away for an extended period and suggested that he stay with Emila in the city for a while. At first, Milan didn't mind the idea. He had fond memories of visiting her as a child, and the thought of spending time in the city was exciting. His Aunt Emila had a successful boutique and was well known in the community. She was elegant, intelligent, and had a way of making people feel at home. Milan, now a young adult, looked forward to spending time with her again. Emila welcomed Milan with open arms, offering him the guest room in her beautiful home. The house was spacious, filled with light and warmth, and Emila had decorated it with love. Milan couldn't help but notice how graceful and composed she was. Though they hadn't spent much time together in recent years, Milan had always admired Emila's life, and being around her again after all these years made him feel both comforted and intrigued. At first, everything seemed normal. Milan spent his days exploring the city and occasionally helping Emila with small tasks in her boutique. Emila, in turn, made sure to look after him, cooking his favorite meals and giving him advice about life. Milan soon realized how much he had missed her presence, and a strong bond began to form between them. But something started to shift within Milan. He found himself thinking about her more than he should, noticing the way her eyes sparkled when she laughed, or the way her hair fell so perfectly around her face. One evening, after dinner, Milan was sitting on the couch, flipping through a book. Emila came into the room and asked if he needed anything. Her simple question made Milan feel nervous for reasons he couldn't quite understand. He couldn't shake the strange feeling that had begun to linger around her. It wasn't just familial affection, it was something deeper, something more confusing. Milan started noticing the smallest things about her. How her voice softened when she spoke, how her smile seemed to linger in his thoughts long after the conversation had ended. He found himself thinking about her even when she wasn't around. There was no doubt in his mind now that he was developing feelings for her, but he was struggling to understand them. He knew he couldn't act on these feelings. Emila was his aunt, and a relationship between them would be both morally and socially unacceptable. He tried to push these emotions aside, convincing himself that it was all in his head. After all, Emila was simply being kind and nurturing, something he had always valued. But no matter how hard he tried to ignore it, the feelings only grew stronger. A few weeks later, Milan decided to go on a solo bike ride around the city, trying to clear his mind. Emila, noticing that he seemed down, asked if he wanted some company. Milan hesitated for a moment, but then agreed. They rode together to a park outside the city and spent the afternoon walking among the trees, talking about life and catching up. As the sun began to set, they found a quiet spot by a small pond and sat down on the grass. Emila smiled and asked Milan about his future plans. Milan, unsure of how to put his feelings into words, hesitated before answering. "I don't know," he began, his voice low. "I guess I just feel like everything is changing so fast, and sometimes I just don't know how to deal with it." Emila looked at him, her expression softening. "Change is inevitable, Milan. Life doesn't always follow the path we expect, but that's what makes it interesting. You just have to trust yourself, trust the people who care about you, and know that everything will work out in the end." Milan looked into her eyes and felt a wave of emotion overwhelm him. For the first time, he realized just how much he relied on her and how much he cared for her. He had always admired her, but now his feelings seemed to be more than just admiration. "I know," Milan said, taking a deep breath. It's just, there's something I've been feeling lately, and I don't know how to explain it. Emila raised an eyebrow, sensing his unease. What do you mean? Milan hesitated, his heart racing. I think I've started to feel differently about you, Aunt Emila. More than just as a family member. I think I have feelings for you, and I know that's wrong, but I can't help it. The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment there was complete silence. Emila's expression changed, becoming more serious. She didn't speak immediately, but instead took a deep breath, as if trying to process what Milan had said. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft yet firm. Milan, I care about you deeply. You're like a son to me. But what you're feeling, it's a natural reaction to the closeness we've shared. It's something that many people experience when they're close to someone, but it doesn't mean it's something that should be acted upon. You have to understand that. Milan felt a mix of relief and disappointment. He had feared that Emila would reject him, but hearing her gentle response helped him understand that what he felt was part of his emotional growth, and it wasn't something that could be pursued. I understand, Milan said quietly, his voice filled with emotion. I just needed to say it. I think I can handle it now. Emila smiled warmly at him and placed a hand on his shoulder. You don't need to apologize, Milan. It's okay to have feelings, but you must also respect the boundaries that keep relationships healthy. We'll always be close, and that's what matters most. Milan nodded, feeling a sense of peace wash over him. He realized that while his feelings for Emila were complex, they didn't define their relationship. What mattered was the unconditional love and support they had for each other. As the days went by, Milan began to focus on his own future, working through his emotions with the support of his aunt. He learned to appreciate their bond for what it was, a deep familial connection. Emila, in turn, continued to be a guiding force in his life, helping him grow and make sense of his feelings.